Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Pierre, he's Chris. We're here to break down ADP in our recent mock draft to get you ready for the 2022 fantasy football season. All right, so we already talked about our favorite picks from this mock. Now we're going to go down our least favorite from each round with the first 5 rounds of this mock. All right, Chris, are you ready to spread some hate on some of these players?
Always.
Always. All right. We don't hate the player, we just hate the ADP. All right, so here we go. Talk about who your least favorite first round pick was, who's being just overhyped way too soon in this mock.
Well, speaking of not hating the player, hating the ADP, that is Javonte Williams, because I love the player. I hyped him up all out last season as a guy I thought would take over that backfield. He would be a league winner down the stretch, but it never happened. Why didn't it happen? Because Melvin Gordon is actually still really good at football, and the Broncos seem to really like Melvin Gordon. And the fact that people are taking Javonte Williams in the mid to late of the first round, I don't understand this at all. The only way this pick can possibly pay off is if Melvin Gordon is gone, and I don't think that's even close to a certainty. In fact, I would think there's a much higher chance that Melvin Gordon is back than there is that he is gone. So this is going to end up being a wasted pick if Melvin Gordon resigns, because we're probably just going to see something similar to what we saw last year with these two guys splitting all the reps. So this is a guy, exactly like you said, love the player, hate the ADP. No way I can draft Javonte Williams in the first round knowing there's a good chance Melvin Gordon will be back.
And to tell you how much I agree with that take, in the same mock, I think it was round, 7, maybe 8, I took Melvin Gordon. These are 2 running backs that pretty much put up the same stats this year, and I got one in round 8 versus round 1. And I will also say, again, love the talent, but are we really still taking a Detroit Lions running back, not named Barry, in round 1? What did DeAndre Swift do to prove that he's worth a first-round pick this year? Look, I get that he's talented. He's a great pass-catching back. Maybe they'll build around him, but how do you know? I mean, they're going to have a new offensive coordinator. The thing about offensive coordinator Anthony Lynn was that he loves his running backs, right? He likes to have a guy and roll with it. We didn't really see that, and now we're going to go to a new guy who maybe doesn't feel that way. Maybe thinks they should air it out more, because towards the end of the season, when they actually put the ball back in Goff's hands and tried passing more and giving it to Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's when they had some success. TJ Hawkinson's coming back. I don't see a path for 20-plus touches a game for DeAndre Swift. Maybe he doesn't need that. But again, why would you take him before Joe Mixon? And that's exactly what happened in this mock. So I like the player. Look, maybe you could sell me that he's like a low-end RB1 if everything breaks right, but not a first-round pick. There's no way. All right, let's go on to round 2. Chris, who was overhyped in that round?
I know he's your guy, but I could not believe Cam Akers went in the second round. Now, you didn't pick him, so kudos to you for not picking him. But what are we doing here taking a guy coming off of Achilles injury in the second round? I get it that he's back on the field in some capacity, but it's not like he's already out there, handling the ball 15, 20, 25 times, looking explosive, looking like, rookie season Cam Akers. This is a lot to ask for a guy coming off a significant injury who I didn't even think was worth a second round last year when he was healthy. So he's definitely not worth a second round this year coming off that Achilles injury. I mean, maybe a little later in the draft, maybe if he really breaks out here in the playoffs, I'd feel a little better about it. But right now, no way can I take this guy in the second round.
Yeah, I didn't take him in the second. I wouldn't take him in the third either, honestly. Did we also forget, by the way, that Sony Michel is there, and he looks really good, his time as a starter. And Darrell Henderson, when he was healthy, he looked pretty good too. And this offense basically runs through Cooper Kupp. I think you need to search for a little more upside in the second round. So I agree. And now my overhyped pick is a guy that it's hard to argue because he was the tight end 1. He outscored Travis Kelce, and that is Mark Andrews. So Kelce was drafted before him. You're saying get Andrews in the second round. How can you hate that? Well, I don't hate getting him. It's just, here's what always happens from year to year is we've been convinced that there's got to be a big 3 at tight end, right? There's got to be somebody who's going to carry your team, right? Ever since the days of Zach Ertz was one of the big 3. I know Kelce is what he is, but how do we know that Mark Andrews is going to be the tight end 1 next year or even the tight end 2? Don't forget that a lot of his production came because they basically didn't have all the running backs that they entered the season with. J.K. Dobbins was out, Gus Edwards was out. They're leaning on veterans like Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman, who did fine, but again, this offense had to lean on him. Rashad Bateman's going to be a second-year receiver. Marquise Brown maybe will stay healthy. All that, it just makes it a little iffy proposition for me that Andrews is like a lock to be that high scoring of a tight end. So I'm not totally against tight end early, but I just think this is a little too early to get a guy that, again, I like him, but I don't love him this early. All right, let's go on to round 3. Tell me who you think is your least favorite pick.
Look, we know Calvin Ridley has amazing upside when he's on the field. We don't know what the future holds for Calvin Ridley. He took that leave for personal reasons, and then we never really heard anything close to him being ready for the season. And there's also reports that he may just want out of Atlanta, so he could be in a whole new situation next year, and that doesn't automatically mean a better situation. It could be a worse situation where he's competing with other receivers. So for me, to take a guy like that in the 3rd round who has so much uncertainty, I just don't think it's necessary. There is so many guys still on the board with plenty of upside, especially at the wide receiver position, that I don't think you need to take on this unnecessary risk of Calvin Ridley. I'm okay with Calvin Ridley in 2022 drafts, just not in the 3rd round. I think that's a little too early.
So I agree. Everything you just said, in fact, about Calvin Ridley is kind of how I feel about my next pick in round 4, but I'll save that. And then a lot of what you said about Cam Akers the previous round is exactly how I feel about J.K. Dobbins. So this is a guy who missed the entire season. We don't know exactly if he's going to come back to form, which, by the way, what exactly is that? Because all we've seen is him be productive for half a season as a rookie in the second half. And a lot of his production came on touchdowns. I get it's a run-heavy offense, but it's also an offense that doesn't give any single running back a ton of carries because Lamar Jackson is still one of the top ball carriers on the team. They will use a committee. Gus Edwards might be back too. Dobbins is not going to be a workhorse back. So he's solid as an RB2. I don't mind taking him coming off injury, but I do mind taking him early in the 3rd round. That's the thing, not just 3rd round, but the 3.3, I think that's just not necessary. So I prefer him at least a round later. All right, so let's get to round 4. Who did you like the least in that round?
There's 3 things you can count on in life: death, taxes, Mike Evans falling to the 4th round of every draft, Mike Evans going for 1,000 yards every season, and DJ Moore being overvalued every single year without fail. Was that 3 things or more? I can't keep track. DJ Moore every single year. People want to talk themselves into this guy as being an elite fantasy asset. And look, I think DJ Moore is a fine real-life wide receiver, but name me a year he's been good in fantasy or great in fantasy. I'll wait, and I'm going to be waiting here a long time because it's never, ever happened. Even last year, when they went out and signed the incredibly talented Sam Darnold, by the way, he's not incredibly talented, people still sold themselves on DJ Moore being an elite fantasy player. And here we are in 2022, doing it again, drafting DJ Moore early in the 4th round. I don't understand this. Do people even watch fantasy football? Do they pay attention to what happens? Stop drafting this guy so early. He's barely even a wide receiver 3 in fantasy. Please, stop doing this. You don't need to take DJ Moore this early.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks still in Carolina, including the head coach who is staying on, I guess. All right, now, I did hint at this earlier. How about a guy who missed the season but was the number 1 receiver in fantasy 2 years ago? Would you take him in the end of round 4? I wouldn't, because he's Michael Thomas, and it's just another headache waiting to happen. I know he isn't necessarily the second coming of Antonio Brown, but he's pretty close. Look, this is a guy who all we heard about all offseason is drama about he didn't rehab properly, waited too long to get surgery, and he's been pretty vocal on social media about other things. To me, between his injury history and just, I guess, maybe not too favorable attitude towards his own franchise. Oh, plus the fact that who's going to be quarterback next year for the Saints? Taysom Hill is going to have surgery because of Liz Frank injury. Jameis Winston's coming off an ACL. Let's see, who does that leave? Trevor Siemian. Okay, you want Michael Thomas with Trevor Siemian at quarterback all year? You can take him. I'll pass. All right, round 5. Let's finish up. Who is your least favorite pick in that round?
Well, this is another love the player, hate the ADP, and that's James Conner. And look, I was very happy to see James Conner have a resurgence in Arizona because I know people had kind of quit on him after a couple down years in Pittsburgh. But let's look at what really happened to James Conner this year. Early in the year, he was scoring a lot of touchdowns, but he wasn't doing anything else. Then Chase Edmonds got hurt, and he became a workhorse and looked like he would be a league winner. Then Chase Edmonds came back, and he went back to being a guy who just was scoring touchdowns again. And guess what? That's who he's going to be next year. He's going to be a 100% touchdown-dependent guy who doesn't catch a lot of passes, who doesn't get a ton of volume. You don't need to draft him in the beginning of the 5th round. Like, just grab a wide receiver here, or grab Kyle Pitts here, who we talked about in our love video. You don't need to take James Conner here. You can find a running back like James Conner later in the draft. Plenty of them, to be honest with you. So please, don't take James Conner this early. Love the player, love the story, don't love the ADP.
A guy who is definitely underdrafted heading into 2021, but it's going to be now overdrafted going into 2022. That's not the way to do it. And a guy to me who is just always overdrafted, and that is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I'm not a hater, but I just have never been a fan. I always knew a running back in Kansas City offense isn't going to be a fantasy stud. I guess we're still hoping that maybe a 3rd-year breakout and then next year a 4th-year breakout. It's not going to happen. Okay, Darrell Williams was better than him when CEH was hurt. This is an offense that doesn't revolve around the running back, if you haven't noticed. So 5th round, yeah, that's not too bad. Take him as an RB2, okay, fine. But, well, I mean, what are you really hoping for at this point? I'd rather take some of the guys that you mentioned later that at least have some unknown upside. I can see Travis Etienne doing what CEH does. Edwards-Helaire is not going to be a thing. Let's stop trying to make him a thing. 5th round, to me, not interested. Hopefully you're interested in what we're doing all offseason. We're going to bring you the best in fantasy football content. Try to get you ready for the 2022 season and prepare to crush your drafts next year. All right, guys, thanks for watching.